You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's show is also brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades at Supply House. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources, latest product info to help you get the job done right, plus the complete inventory over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands. You'll always find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service. So always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, discounted on your order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn during the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. Start ordering plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies for just a few clicks. Use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order at supplyhouse.com. Park Rangers locked on Cougs. Houston heading to Final Four after beating Purdue. Tennessee. Houston gets to face Duke in the final stages of the big dance. They are the late game Saturday night, 7:49 estimated tip-off Texas time for the folks making the trip over. We talked about game time, find ways to get tickets. It's going to be a big deal to paint that city and town and stadium red. Duke is a national fan base. That's going to be important for Houston. If we didn't learn anything else about Duke last year when we played them in Sweet 16 in Dallas, we have to understand they will travel. They will have people all over the country. And finally, it's a lot of T-shirt fans. I mean, there are people that just like Duke basketball and what it does or stand for or whatever. And so there'll be a lot of people like, hey, I don't really have a team, but I like Duke or whatever, and so I'm going to go to the game. I got a ticket or whatever. I'm going to go cheer for Duke. I like Cooper Flag, or I liked JJ Redick once upon a time, or whatever, right? And so you got to make sure we do a good job on that. Once you're watching this Duke team, when I was looking up stuff about Miles and kind of trying to synthesize my thoughts on Miles Uzan and his tournament, is that I think Houston's going to have a pretty dramatic and significant advantage at the point guard spot, given all the things that he does defensively, that we've talked about him doing defensively thus far in the postseason. Miles' matchup in the Final Four might be his easiest. I assume he's going to guard Tyrese Proctor. Tyrese Proctor's a big, strong guard, and he and Kneppel kind of run the two guard spots for them at Duke, 6'5", and Kneppel is 6'7", but neither's really a traditional point guard. They're not like a run the ball through them, keep the ball out of the other team's hands kind of point guard. Truthfully, the best Duke offense kind of runs from Cooper Flag being the initial creator. I got a thought on that in a second as well. But I think that means you're going to see Houston harassing guards because they've got the advantage in those spots. Obviously, Jamal Shed is 1 of 1, but certainly when we saw him healthy for the first 7 or 8 minutes of the game last year, that was what he was doing. And I would argue that last year's Duke team had better point guard play. It's probably the only thing last year's Duke team was better at, but last year's Duke team probably had better guard play, like run and offense guard play. And this year, I think Houston's got a pretty stark advantage there. You can mention veteran leadership and stuff like that. We're going to talk a lot about Houston and Duke throughout the week. But ultimately, I do think that that's an advantage for the Cougs. I think that you're going to see that a lot. Use that a lot in the game this week. I also think, for what it's worth, that's the kind of thing that defensively, from schematics and coverage standpoint, Samson's going to want to exploit because it's kind of already in his wheelhouse, right? Now, I will say, with all of that said, I think that means they're going to probably end up pulling Cooper Flag, big number 1 lottery pick, et cetera, for Duke. He's more of a true modern power forward. They'll probably pull him on the perimeter because they're at their best when he's a creator. We're going to talk to J.J. Jackson this week. We're going to talk a lot about breaking down advantage this week, et cetera. They're going to pull him out to be a creator, I'd imagine, because that's going to be where their best offense comes from. And Duke doesn't start or doesn't really in their rotation play anyone below 6'5", right? So they're going to be able to get the ball over the top of things, I guess you'd assume. Houston's wingspan will help cut off some of that, obviously. They're the longest team in the country in that sense. But when you look at Duke doing their big guy thing and pulling Cooper Flag out, I kind of think that that's actually going to also play to Houston, because suddenly Houston can go a little bit smaller with Terrence or Malik or those guys running the 4 spot, because ultimately what that allows you to do is, you use a manual to kind of muscle around Cooper Flag as well. What that allows you to do some is play him like a guard because they're not beyond the perimeter. And then on the other end, you pull one up, because you're such a great shooting team that is Houston, you're pulling one of their bigs out of the lane as far as like potential shot blockers when you drive. And I think that you'll see Houston, and this is my earliest thoughts on this, right? I've gone back and watched what they did against Alabama, and then I watched some clips from stuff earlier in the year, some not even full condensed game kind of clips, like shorter stuff from throughout the year. And that's kind of where I'm thinking Duke's at right now. And I think that Houston's got a pretty big advantage. That's a pretty significant spot. The point guard's not quite the quarterback level of importance as football is. But in March Madness and the NCAA tournament, the point guard's pretty important. It calms you down, stops the other team's run, gets your offense going, gets guys set up. And it's a big spot Houston's got a big advantage in. And look, ultimately, I don't think that like the average national person would tell you to go small against Duke. They're just so big. But I think Houston's got tools to make that work for stretches, and it kind of offers another wild card that Duke has to account for, because Miles is such a great defender at the point guard spot that I feel like they're going to be able to force some turnovers there. Duke is not a great turnover forcing team. They're not even, for all their size, relatively speaking, as good a rebounding team statistically as you might think. The game's going to be dictated a lot by who controls the pace. That's kind of a stark contrast between the two. And so we'll see, I guess, how Houston and the Cougars do that on Saturday in San Antonio. I'm feeling pretty confident right now. These are all one-game samples, right? They are not best out of 3. They're certainly not like best out of 7. And as we saw against Duke last year, anything can happen in one game. But they've got to guard us too. We're going to wind down the shot clock and get 3 off late. We make a lot of our threes. Again, Miles Uzan shooting 59.3% in the postseason from behind the arc. I feel pretty good, and I felt pretty good all week. And I'm going to pick Houston to win all week. I don't think anyone talked me off that. But right now, I'm like, okay, we can turn these guys over at the point guard position. That feels significant. That feels important. And throughout the week, when we're talking about that and what that importance and difference could be for Houston, we'll also talk later today. I got a little short, I think it's like not even 10 minutes coming out, but about Matthew Mitchell, and he's being announced formally on Tuesday as the women's coach. I'm excited about that one. We'll talk about that later on. I'm talking to some people about different players and coaches throughout the week. We'll talk with AJ Jackson, and we'll talk a lot about college basketball folks too. It's Final Four week for Houston. And man, we all thought it would get here. I think we all were expecting a good run, expecting a good showing. But now that it's here, the Final Four is awesome. Awesome time. Awesome time to be a Cougar. Go check out Locked On College Basketball, what Andy and I are doing over there after this. Locked On Coogs, a primary Locked On podcast network. Thank you for subscribing, listening to us every morning and all of that. Locked On means we're your team, your Final Four bound Cougs every day. Go Cougs.
The NCAA Tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA Tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.